Join me, Harriet Gould, for the Lab Matters podcast to hear fascinating stories every week from the inspiring people behind the science. In this episode of Lab Matters, join me, Harriet Gould, and Professor Gill Reid for a retrospective on her extraordinary career. I'm here with the immediate past president of the Royal Society of Chemistry in your natural habitat, the RSC HQ, Burlington House, Professor Gill Reid. Now, Gill, I was looking through the list of accolades that Gillian sent to me before we did this, and your body of work, really. And I said to her, we're so lucky to have someone like you in our midst. So Professor Gill Reid, thank you very much for joining us today on the Lab Matters podcast. We will come on to all of your work and everything that you've done at the Royal Society of Chemistry and everywhere else. But before that, I want to track back a little bit to your upbringing, your childhood. You were born in Scotland. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like and where you went to school and so on?
Thanks very much, Harriet. It's great to be here, and of course very happy to chat through some of my backstory, if you like. So yes, I was born and brought up in Grangemouth in central Scotland, so between Glasgow and Edinburgh, right in the middle of the country. I was the youngest of three girls, and had a very happy childhood in Grangemouth with close family, very supportive, very inspiring mum who really encouraged us to work hard, do our best, and actually one of the things that she always focused on with us was the importance of having a career, having something that we were independent and able to take forward in life and achieve something. And I think that reflected a little bit of her own background. She was born in Stirling, not so far away, but in a different era, of course. And she had left school at 14 for family reasons, and didn't really have a chance to build a career and maybe do some of the things that she would have liked to do. So she kind of lived that out through us, and that was a fantastic environment to grow up in. You knew when you were in trouble. You knew when you hadn't quite met her expectations. She had a look. You just needed to see that glance and you thought, I'll just think again about how I go on. But yeah, we had a good upbringing. Grangemouth is an industrial town. It's a port, active port in these days. BP, ICI, so big chemical industries. So I knew a lot of people that worked in that industry, although I would say that wasn't in itself a direct motivator for me to become a chemist. Like many other chemists, it was one or two people in school, one or two opportunities that they presented me with, either going out to visit different venues where chemistry was in action.
What were the people at school?
So definitely a science teacher in my middle school was the first kind of point that I realised that not just was I enjoying the question and answer around science more broadly, but this conversation, you were speaking with each other much more on an equal footing, and I really liked that. I didn't feel like a pupil with somebody who knew so much more than me. And it wasn't I thought I knew everything. It was just that I was seeing in them their passion for science. And that was kind of infectious. And most certainly when I went to high school, my plan as a youngster, and I loved being outside, cycling, I loved puzzles, I loved building things. So I was very much, hands-on and active. And my plan was to leave school at 16 and go and get a job. My older sister had done that, and I thought that was a perfectly good thing to do. But I fell in love with chemistry as particularly at secondary school, and my teacher there was amazing. And I one of the things I've really enjoyed as president of the RSC is the opportunity, we've kept in touch over the years, but the opportunity last year to have Jim Murdoch present at the president's reception in the RSC. He was a very active member of the RSC in education in Scotland over many years, and he had a huge influence in my, that building confidence, gentle encouragement, advice, words of wisdom, and just again that passion for chemistry, encouraging me to explore and find things out. And that was really the switching on point for me.
It sounds like you were really well nurtured from the off.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was. I'm quite a determined person. Maybe not so overtly. Maybe that's false. Maybe that's my view rather than other people's views. But I am quite determined. I quite like a competition. I quite like a challenge. And I think these are all important parts of one's character that you can use positively to motivate and drive forward, and hopefully encourage and recognise that in people that you work with as well, and help them to develop.
Indeed. So you went to the University of Edinburgh to do your degree, to do your PhD, and then you got a lectureship in chemistry at Southampton in 1991, and then became a professor in 2006. So that's a real chunk of time. So let's talk about why Edinburgh. What made you choose that for a start?
So Grangemouth is a small town in Scotland, and although I had a happy childhood, there wasn't a lot of money in the family. We going to Edinburgh for a visit in these days was a big adventure. We did that maybe once or maybe twice a year. We would go into Edinburgh and have a day out as a family. Usually there'd be some drama would happen, and these things. When you're growing up, losing the car keys, and having to get somebody to come and find us, pick us up and take us home, and just sort of silly things that happen. But I think probably in terms of why Edinburgh, probably two things. One was it's half an hour in the train from Grangemouth. So it felt like it was and going from a small town to a relatively big city in Scotland was quite a big move for me. And the other thing was certainly, again, my chemistry teacher, who had himself both studied as an undergraduate in Edinburgh and also did a PhD in organic chemistry in Edinburgh. And so we had talked about that when I was indicating my interest in going to university. So that was why Edinburgh. There were a few hiccups along the way. Just before I was due, during the year when I was applying to go to university, my father was made redundant from his job, and that was a moment in time when I wasn't sure whether I would still be going in the direction that I had been planning. However, I did, and things worked out. I had some interesting times in Edinburgh. I mean, it's a lovely city to be in, and I've got very fond memories. But again, I can reflect on, and I think it's important to reflect on some of the challenges along the way as well, because you can look at all the things that worked out perfectly, and it looks like a very linear process. But I had as many ups and downs as anyone else. I often talk about my fun with quantum mechanics. It wasn't my thing. I couldn't see, it was too abstract. The way it was, for me at that time, it was too abstract. And I remember thinking in my second year as an undergraduate, is this really what chemistry is? And I was sort of really questioning whether it was what I wanted to do just at that moment in time, because I didn't have the context to realise how quantum mechanics fits into the landscape of chemistry. And of course that comes, like all of these things, it comes as you build up your knowledge and your the package that makes your degree program. But I remember having some wobbles at that time, and I guess I often see that we learn to tolerate each other, quantum mechanics and me, and yeah, we kind of get on okay now. And of course I see the importance of. It's one of the things I think it's also important to be challenged. If you do things that you always feel that it's nice to enjoy what you're doing, but to feel that you're good at what you're doing. It's also important to feel that little bit of pressure when you're not so sure that you're doing the right thing and you're not so confident that you know what you're doing, because that's what builds your resilience and helps you to, it really challenges you to develop as an individual. And so, although at the time that was challenging for me, in the fullness of time in my undergraduate degree, of course, it was very important. I have to say, when I was in Edinburgh, it was in I think in my final year, in my fourth year, that Leslie Yellowlees came back from her, I think, postdoc in Australia, and she joined the staff in Edinburgh. And, it's been a lovely, circle of involvement over these many years. I was then on the board of trustees when Leslie was first female president of the RSC. But I think at that time she was the first female on the staff. I may not be quite right with that, but I do remember it was quite striking to have Leslie on the staff, and as I guess at the time I didn't think of Leslie as a role model, and absolutely no disrespect at all to Leslie, but you're busy and doing, you're working your way through your degree and so on. But that was important. I was really fortunate in my undergraduate final year. I was allocated a project with Martin Schroeder in inorganic macrocyclic chemistry. And Martin has been, a tremendous support and, inspiration to me over many years, and a great friend actually as well. He probably recognised things in me that I didn't recognise in myself as a PhD student, challenging me to do things that probably he knew were outside my comfort zone. But that was all the more reason that it was important to take these steps. And so my PhD in Edinburgh was a fantastic experience. I always say to students, the PhD is about ups and downs. Things go well, things don't go so well. I was lucky. I had lots of successes. But I did experience some challenges in terms of things not working, and that's part of learning to do research. But I also learned an awful lot more from that, and it was the opportunity to develop as a person and build my, just understand myself a bit better, understand what I was good at, and that was fine, understand what I wasn't so good at, what I needed to get better at. And that's quite an important development, actually, at that stage.
Do you remember, or can you share any particular moment where things weren't going quite as you'd hoped?
Yeah, so probably some of the challenges were around, I suppose my organic chemistry wasn't as strong as it might have been. I was working in
terms of body of knowledge, or the actual experiments?
The experimental part. I was working on a project involving macrocyclic ligands, these big organic ring molecules, where the likelihood of forming the ring is always rather limited. So you've got to really play some tricks to get that to work. And I thought I would be able to do that, and it was quite a struggle. And I can remember, doing reactions time after time, trying to work out what to do differently. But again, that's what makes you the person you are. It makes you the chemist you are, because every experiment means something. If you think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, you're then testing that hypothesis. And success or failure is information. Whichever way that lands, it's useful information that you then take forward again. So yeah, and I suppose the other part that was, from my point, a challenge to me was probably giving my first research talks at conferences. And again, my connection to the RSC, I joined the RSC as a student member during my PhD, partly because that allowed me to attend RSC conferences, the Scottish Dalton Conference, Universities of Scotland Inorganic Conferences, and being able to, thinking about going and giving your first talk on your research in a room full of people that you don't know, amongst whom there are some eminent chemists that you recognise from the literature and so on. That was quite daunting for me as a relatively naive and sheltered young person. But it was an amazing experience. We got great opportunities to train, practicing by giving talks in the university every Friday. There'd be somebody speaking, but actually, again, the curious thread of the RSC runs through this. In speaking at my first conference, you're really quite nervous and hoping you don't get asked, wondering if you'll even hear the question you're being asked at the end of you're so nervous about it. But people coming up to me afterwards and congratulating me on a nice talk and encouraging me, giving me that feedback that was at that time so valuable to me, and that's taught me a lot. And some of these individuals are, again, senior members of the RSC, have been involved in the RSC for many years, and these are the things that make you feel part of the community when you're getting, it's not about just hearing nice things, it's speaking to people and understanding what's gone well, what can you improve next time, and that's the evolution that we go through. So I really valued that.
And you've published over 350 papers, research papers. So now you're going to be the one that people are nervous of presenting in front of for the first time.
So I remember very clearly how that felt as a young person, and it's really influenced my approach to young people. I do try, I've done a lot of schools outreach and engagement and so on over the years. Again, I think it's important to put a focus on the science, the individuals, the nature of the subject, what it can offer, and so on. So I've done a lot of that over the years, but I always try to make sure I take time to speak to young people, because I think it's, I remember being in awe of people, and I hope they're not in awe of me, because there's, that's not really valid.
I'm sure they must be. We're all in awe of you.
But it's lovely to speak with young people and just hear from them what fires them up, and if something of that, the conversations that we have help them to navigate their journey and go on in chemistry and achieve what they want to achieve and contribute to the community, then I've done my job. Actually, it's really important.
The consummate inspirer. So I just wondered if you could share with us maybe some of your favourite research. That those 350 research papers, that's an enormous body of work. Do you have any favourites among them?
I guess there are aspects of the work that I've done over the years that I've particularly enjoyed for some specific reason. I'm an inorganic chemist, I'm an experimental chemist. My group, of course, they're the ones that do all the work, and I'm enormously grateful to everybody that's worked with me over the years. It's been fantastic, and I hope many years more of that to come. But I think for me, the key thing was beginning to get a real sense of, I know where my skills are, and I know where my skills don't sit. I'm not, I can't pretend to work in a completely different area of science and be an expert there. So what I've been really fortunate to do is develop really, really enjoyable, stimulating collaborations with others, both within chemistry in the wider context, and also across into other disciplines. And I think, that's been probably the most enriching part, where we as the synthesis chemists can bring our knowledge and skills and merge that with interests and challenges and problems that the other disciplines have. And you've got that really interesting middle ground where there are problems to solve, but none of us can solve them alone. So you've got to really build that dynamic and dialogue and trust and energy in the meetings and planning and so on. And that gives me a real buzz. I love that. And maybe what I love even more is when at the end of the meeting, the academics sort of leave the room and the postdocs and PhD students stay in the room, because they've got all the things that they want to discuss based on the meeting because they want to drive it forward. That's them taking ownership and, developing. And so, so that whole collaborative piece is really important. And I think that's given me a particular lens, if you like, as president of the RSC, to advocate for science as a whole and for that importance of collaboration. It's not about being a jack of all trades. None of us can do that. You're not going to be able to be expert at everything. So you bring your own expertise and you bring in the right expertise from other parts of your professional life, either within the university or externally or internationally. And of course, then bringing young people into that environment and seeing them beginning to grow into that and building their skills. That's a fantastic environment to work in.
You mentioned international work. You're an international chemist as well. You've won awards. You're very involved in many things, and I'm just trying to look down this list to select one. But I thought maybe I should hand that to you. Which one would you like to talk about?
I guess
is it UChems or something else?
Probably. I think I was delighted to be elected to Fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, of course, and the Learners' Society in Scotland, which I think is from as a very proud and passionate and patriotic Scot, that's been very special to me, and I'm very proud of that. And what it's done is allow me to reconnect. I've always had strong connections with Scotland, but it's allowed me to reconnect professionally with quite a few different activities in Scotland. So I really enjoyed that. And of course, the IUPAC award last year,
Distinguished Women in Chemistry.
Yeah, that was lovely because I think of course it's a huge honour for me personally, but it was really in recognition of that sort of leadership and mentorship and so on. And I do, at the time when you're going through your early stages of your career and navigating, bringing up a young family alongside, the professional side and so on, you haven't got a lot of time to think about being a role model. And that was never actually in my mind. I tried to do the right thing. I tried to always balance, trying to look after the young ones and, do for them what they needed and family life and so on. But my career in chemistry, my professional career was really important. And so, you don't have a lot of time at that stage to think about what you do and what that might mean for younger people looking on to that. But it's been, I've been really, very, I guess, humbled by a lot of feedback from young people saying that, they saw me growing up, but my kids growing up and balancing that with the academic role and so on, and how much that was important to them to see it was possible. And I think we've still got a lot of work to do there to try to lower some of the barriers and allow this to be a more natural course. But yeah, I think the international, the IUPAC Awards was a lovely opportunity to reflect a bit on that. And, I hope that it will, I hope that over the years I have helped others to think about that it is possible. And moreover, it's a wonderful, enriching experience to, have the opportunities, throughout my career. And, these opportunities are there for others that follow along. So.
Lab Matters is brought to you by the award-winning temperature control equipment from Polyscience, available worldwide. Polyscience, changing the world of temperature control forever. One thing that strikes me throughout this talk is your huge levels of self-awareness. That really comes across in spades, and I wonder if that is a natural thing or if that was a nurtured thing for you personally.
I think I've always had a sense of questioning, like many people, questioning whether I'm good enough, questioning whether should I put myself out, should I try and do this, or is that beyond me? So a little bit, probably always a little bit of, maybe a little bit of lack of self-confidence sometimes. I think I'm much better at that now, but it's not always been an easy journey, actually. And again, I think I realise the things that have been important to me in helping me navigate my journey, when everybody's journey is going to be different, but help me to navigate. And I often hear, people saying, again, young people, members of the public, assume that you were always destined to be a professor of chemistry or whatever else. And of course, that couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah, I began my chemistry career because of my love of chemistry. Then I realised I had a real love of teaching, and that's fed through to, I want people to understand and care about science and realise how enriching science is, how important it is for the world around us, what it means for us, what it means for the economy. All of these are touching on different parts of society, of course, but that communication part's been important, and I think that made me more aware of the importance of being honest about your own journey. Don't sweep over the things that were more challenging. It's actually, I think it's important to talk about that, because that's most of us, everyone, I guess, has things that they found more challenging than others. And for our own group well-being, we often think about the nice things because that keeps us, but actually reflecting on the bigger picture, I think is a much more interesting story, and I hope, again, helps people to see that, scientists, chemists, professors, whatever, we're just human beings like anyone else. It happens to be, chemistry is my hobby. I love it. I love the environment. I love the people. I love the opportunity that chemistry and the chemical sciences present for the world. So I have an optimism, and that really drives me on. And so, I'm not sure I've answered your question, Harriet, but I think it's a bit of a kind of reflecting on, based on feedback from others, that such and such was very important. You begin to realise that the things that you were just doing, you're maybe showcasing as a bit of a scary phrase to use, but you're demonstrating behaviours, and you need to think about your behaviours, because these do influence other people. And I think that's something that, again, I align so strongly with the RSC in terms of the inclusion. And we need to be honest, open, and hear, see, absorb what's going on around us to make change happen.
So you've reached the end of your term as president. You stood down. Well, we're recording this on the 5th of July, which is the day after the most recent general election. You stood down as of Monday.
That's right. Yes.
And how did you feel when that happened? You knew the time was coming. It's a set term.
Absolutely, and I've said a number of times over the last months, it's really important, actually, that it is a fixed term for a number of reasons. One, the society, chemistry, the RSC needs to have fresh ideas, fresh energy, new faces. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be always proud, immensely proud to have been president of the RSC. It's been a huge honour. I have loved it. If I reflect, I said I loved my PhD. I have loved being president of the RSC, and it was something I never thought I would. It didn't even occur to me that it would ever happen. So, it's been an absolute blast, honestly.
Favourite point? High point?
Oh, I've loved working with so many parts of the organisation and our community. So, going out and interacting with our members in their spaces, being up in Scotland, being over in Wales and Ireland, various parts of England, mixing with the community, hearing from them what matters to them, and being able to bring that back in and think about where that making sure that that's always embedded, because we are, we have a powerful community with 60,000 members, almost across all different age groups, experience levels, the future, the experienced people that have got us to where we are. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're always connected with our membership. I've loved working with the staff. I've had so many opportunities. Education and engagement with young people was the thing that I wanted to maybe prioritise, amplify the messages there. But the RSC does so much great work, and I can't really pick out one thing and say that's the thing that's really important about the RSC, because it's actually the threads that run crossways that make it all happen. And I've had a fantastic opportunity to really get into the nuts and bolts of what's happening, and work with staff, be at events, see how these things, just yesterday, the emerging technologies competition, so the latest one, I've been to these for a few years, and it's so inspiring. And these gems of what's happening in terms of research coming out of universities and being translated into spin-outs and so on. These are the things that when I then speak to young people or teachers, or when you're speaking with the public, I've got bits of information across here that I can pull across and give real concrete examples. And I think that helps to make the subject dynamic. I mean, chemistry is a very, very creative discipline, and we have so much that we can bring, but making that real for people is important. So yeah, these cross threads have been really important. I've really enjoyed that.
Any advice for your successor?
Enjoy.
Embrace
the opportunities. I think we represent the membership, but be yourself, and drive things forwards. Work with the board of trustees has been fantastic. The leadership team and staff have been fantastic. You're not on this alone, but as president, you have the joy of being, I guess, the figurehead for the ambassador for the chemical sciences, and that's a wonderful experience.
It sounds it. Now, Gill, we could go on for just forever, to be honest. There's so much we haven't talked about, but we haven't got time. So before we do end, I will go and ask you the thing that I like to ask everyone. What are your hopes for the future of science?
So I think science has an enormously important role to play in the future of the planet. We know that it's a significant, chemistry plays a really important role in tackling the global challenges. So we have to be in that place, and we have to influence policy to make sure that we can have the science has the platform and the funding, the resource to enable it to deliver. So my hope is that as we move through many elections, both in the UK but also in other parts of the world, there are many changes happening. I think it's really important that science is at the forefront of people's minds in a very competitive space, because there are many challenges. The cost of living, energy, climate, etc. But in all of these, chemistry and science will play an important role, and we need to continue to make these connections for people and be bold, make statements, and be able to stand up in front of policymakers and so on to persuade them of the importance of science, because that's the way that economies will grow and societies will become stronger. So that's my hope. That's a bold hope, and of course it will go long into the future. But I will certainly always be, as I said on Monday nights, I will always be a very strong advocate for the chemical sciences in our community.
I'm very pleased to hear it. Professor Gill Reid, immediate past president, You are a distinguished woman in chemistry, and you've been recognised as such, and we certainly think you are. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Harriet.